All right, good morning and welcome everybody. We are very excited to have you join us for our accounting panel through the G2U program. My name is Dr. Thomas Norman. I'm from California State, Dominguez Hills, and it is my honor to introduce the moderator for today's event, Professor Michael Manahan. Michael Manahan is an author, financial strategist, consultant, and professor. He served as a chief financial officer for 3 publicly traded companies. He's started and owned 7 small businesses, and he's an advisor who's worked with more than 100 management teams. Mr. Manahan is the former host of BizRap Radio. He's the co-founder of the Polk Institute Foundation, a nonprofit that trains underrepresented minorities in the skills of entrepreneurship. His publications include The Secrets to Raising Capital, The Key to Landing a Job, The Interview, and The Secrets to Job Success. As a teacher of finance and accounting at California State University, Dominguez Hills, Mr. Manahan is educating the CEOs and the CFOs of the future. As his colleague, it's my pleasure to turn the mic over to him. And I'd encourage you, if any of those titles were of interest, they are available for sale, I'm sure, on any online or hopefully some of your local bookstores. Professor Manahan.
Well, thank you, Tom. Or should I call you Tom or Dr. Norman, or does it really matter? Are we being very formal here in this particular presentation, or can we be a little casual? I'm going to go with the casual route. We're not on campus, and yes, I am a professor, and I love teaching and I love helping people. And hopefully, we're going to do that today. Helps the participants in our program today learn a little more about job opportunities, particularly with government agencies as opposed to the private sector. And I've got a fabulous group of panelists here, all who work in different capacities and doing different functions, but primarily in accounting and finance roles in various government agencies. And to start off with, well, first of all, let's just do a little organizational thing. If you have a question, we are using the Q&A tab in the Zoom function. So you will need to type your question into the Q&A tab. If you have something you wish to share with other participants, you can type it into the chat function. And if it's something that we feel is worthwhile and appropriate, we will repost it in the chat function for everybody to see. So again, if you wish to ask a question, I do encourage you to ask questions, please do so through the chat function. To start off with, I'm going to give a very brief introduction to each of our panelists, and then I want each of those panelists in turn to basically give us their background, their bio. I've got a list of questions here somewhere, which I'll pull out. So panelists, I'd like you to tell us a little bit about your background. Tell us what you do, what your job is, what organization you work with. Maybe touch briefly on your duties, and maybe tell us what a typical day looks like. Something I've found in working with students, for many years, is that they often recognize a job title. Oh, everybody recognizes controller, but ask them to describe what a controller actually does, and you get these questioning looks. So I think rather than talking about job titles, I think it's really important that we really kind of explain on a day-to-day basis what we're actually doing, how we produce a product for our employer, if you will. So to start off with, I'm just going to pick one of our panelists at random. And Cindy, please, if you would take the lead, and I'm going to give you maybe about 5 minutes. Try not to spend like the next 20 minutes talking if possible. So everybody's got a chance to jump in here. So Cindy, take it away.
Hi, great. Good morning. It's great to be here. So my name is Cindy Giraldo. I'm currently the Chief Financial Officer for Southern California Association of Governments. I'll tell you a little bit about that job Later on, I'm going to just kind of start chronologically with my education and my initial jobs. So I am a proud Matador, graduated from Cal State University, Northridge. I then went on to work in public accounting for KPMG. I was there a few years before I decided to make the move into a private firm. I went to actually Ticketmaster, something I'm sure probably everybody here has heard of that company. I started as an analyst and I worked my way up over the course of 14 years to a vice president of finance there. That was a very exciting, fast-paced job. I really appreciated my time there and learned a lot. But eventually, you get a little bit tired of the profit motive and I wanted to have a little bit more meaning behind the work that I was doing. So I actually started looking for a job with a nonprofit, something where I could align with the mission of the organization. And a position became available for the finance director for the city of Burbank, which happens to be my hometown. So I was instantly, of course, tied to the mission because we're talking about the community that I grew up in, that I live in, that my kids are being raised in. And I went ahead and I applied for that government job. So it was a big career change and an unusual one for sure, but I was fortunate to be successful in getting that position. And I was the city of Burbank's finance director for 10 years. And just about 6 months ago, made a change and was fortunate to get a position for Southern California Association of Governments, where I'm currently their chief financial officer. So whereas at the city of Burbank, the mission was more local to the community with SCAG, as it's called, our mission is more regional for Southern California. So it's nice to take that one kind of step up and have a little bit broader of a vision in the things that you do. And at SCAG, we're really working towards helping Southern California plan for a successful future. Essentially, the ultimate goal being to improve the quality of life of our residents in the area. And we do that through long-term planning for transportation, addressing the housing crisis that we're all facing right now, as well as the environmental impacts of the things that we do on a day-to-day business, a day-to-day basis as we go kind of through our day. I want to kind of start the typical day in government. And I think one of the inaccurate, presumptions or assumptions of what government is that it's a lot of process and a lot of bureaucracy. And therefore, the days may not be as exciting as one might want for their career. And I couldn't say in my experience, it hasn't really been farther from the truth. Each day is a little bit different. You get to work on new projects, tackle new issues, almost, probably more frequently than I would like it to be, because it seems like there's always something new, some new, initiative that's happening that you're trying to make happen. But as the chief financial officer at SCAG, my primary duty is to ensure compliance with the legal requirements of the funding we receive. So SCAG will receive about $150 million of funding from various sources with various restrictions. And as their CFO, we want to make sure that we not only effectively and efficiently expend those funds, but that we're certainly compliant with those requirements. And that is really the crux of the responsibility of the CFO office at SCAG.
Well, that's great. One of the questions we talked about was a typical day. So could you just describe when you get in the morning, what are you in meetings? Are you sitting at the computer? Are you looking at spreadsheets? Are you reading legal documents? What does a day look like for you?
Sure, I would say half the day is meetings. So we're planning for future call for grants applications from, for different agencies, the requirements. And I would say the other half, or about a 10 to 15% of my day, is going to be reviewing legal documents. So contracts that we're entering into, either for the purchase of consultant services to meet our mission, or to provide grant funds to certain agencies. So a fair amount of, you're certainly partnering with your legal team at your office to make sure that you're working well together. And then, there is a little bit of spreadsheets involved. I mean, certainly we all go into accounting. we like numbers. I like numbers. I like to see the raw data. So I will certainly spend a fair amount of time working in spreadsheets and making sure that we're tracking the funds, appropriately.
Okay, that's fantastic. Well, that was a great overview. Thank you very much. Let's turn to one of our other panelists, and I'm going to pick one of our panelists at random. Keegan, can you please introduce yourself and talk about the nature of what you do, your duties, and maybe describe a typical day for our participants today?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, my name is Keegan Miller. I work for the Defense Contract Audit Agency. We are a Department of Defense agency, one of about approximately 30 agencies in the Department of Defense. And what we do is we're intimately involved in the acquisition cycle. So when the Department of Defense wants to purchase equipment, supplies, services for our warfighter, for our military, that has to go through a contract. And what we do is essentially make sure that those government contractors supplying those goods and services are following federal regulations, that we're getting a fair price, that we are paying, what we should be paying. The old cliche is, the $1,000 hammer, the $2,000 toilet seat, that kind of thing. We're here to make sure that doesn't happen. I guess I should say a little about myself. I graduated from the University of Kansas, go Jayhawks. I started with the DCAA right out of college. I started out as a entry-level auditor at GS7, worked way up to a senior auditor, and now I've been a supervisory auditor with the agency for almost 4 years now. So as a supervisory auditor, I have a team of anywhere from 4 to 6 people. Currently it's 4. 2 months ago it was 6. We did some rearranging, but I'm ultimately responsible for ensuring that audits stay on task, that we're following our own internal guidance, that we're following federal regulations, making sure things get done when they're supposed to be done, reviewing auditors' work, that kind of thing. As an auditor yourself, you're much more involved in the designing of the testing you're going to do, of actually getting in there, meeting with contractors, figuring out, are they doing things properly? Why or why not? That kind of thing. Overall, our agency's goal is to protect the warfighter and support the taxpayer. I mean, that's what we do here. And I will say, like, a typical day is often going to vary. For me personally, a typical day involves a lot of meeting with the team. I typically meet with each person at least once every day or two to talk about their audit status. Make sure, like I said, we're staying on track, we're doing what we need to do, that kind of thing. Also meet with my management team. We meet with contractors on a regular basis, whether at their location or at our office location. So there is a lot of face-to-face. It's not just sitting at a desk. Where we work in particular, in Wichita, there is a lot of aircraft. So most of the contractors we deal with are in the aircraft industry. So we're going out to their facilities. We're touring the production lines. We're meeting with individuals face-to-face on their turf a lot. So it's not just an audit from a desk type thing. We're actually out in the field. We're seeing things getting built. The heavy machinery, the aircraft carriers, the airplanes, the tanks, that kind of thing. So it's pretty interesting.
So Keegan, just to clarify then, you're actually traveling around the country, looking at facilities that manufacture products that are purchased by the United States government.
I should specify, we actually have offices located in every major city. So we're an agency of approximately 5,000 people. Our area is basically all of Kansas. So we do travel around Kansas to the various contractor locations, but typically you're more geographically located. So the contractors in your area. But yes, we do go to the facilities. We have over 60 different contractors under our cognizance that we interact with in a variety of ways. Some almost weekly, others maybe once a year kind of thing. It just depends on the size and structure and the contracts that those particular businesses have with the government. But yes, we are interacting. We are out of the office. A good 25 to 33% of the time is spent not at your you're out and about doing face-to-face, getting out there, seeing things being built, interacting.
Wow, that's amazing. Sounds very, very interesting. Okay, let's move on. Let's hear from our next panelist. Let's see, Claudia, you're up.
Hi, Hi, everyone. My name is Claudia Buenrostro, and I am currently the accounting manager for the city of Carson. A little bit about myself. So I started my education at Cal State Long Beach, and I graduated in accountancy when they were still 49ers. So always a 49er. Then I went to Deloitte. That's where I started my external audit experience. I was there for about 4 years. And I made it up to senior auditor, and that's where I got my CPA. So I am a certified public accountant in the state of California. I then moved into internal audit, actually. So the opposite side, more of the, controls. And now I've always loved audit. So I went to Sony Corporation of America, which is headquartered in New York, but we were auditing the business units here for Sony Entertainment in Culver City. So that job allowed me to travel all over the world. So I have a passion for traveling. So then audit and travel mixed together. What else, no better combination than that. So I would go to the different business units and make sure that, the controls were being followed, regulations. We did financial statement audits, and we will report back to home office here in Culver City. I was there for about 5 years until I decided to personally stay local, since I was, getting married and wanted to start a family. So I actually started looking for something more stable. So that's where the opportunity for, back then I started as an accountant, in the city of Carson. I am a proud resident of Carson. So kind of to Cindy's point, like I wanted to serve the community that I was living in. My daughters were gonna, they're currently going to school here. So I wanted to make sure that I gave back to the community where I live. So what better than, Carson, and then that 5-minute commute is always a plus. So I can't complain much on that. So I have been with the city for about 4 years now, and I got promoted to accounting manager about 1.5 years ago, which was right before, the whole pandemic started. So it was not only was it a new role, I had a whole new payroll team. I had a new everything, and then pandemic hits, right? So what better way to get my feet wet in the role than to just take on all those additional challenges. So currently, I oversee about 12 people, both professional and clerical. My areas that I oversee are AP, so make sure that all of our invoices are getting paid on time, making sure that since we are the last eyes of the expenses, make sure that they are financially, for business purposes, make sure that they have the correct POs, the contracts are in place. As payroll, we're in charge of paying, the 600 plus employees on our payroll register. So we do that on a weekly basis, making sure that we're getting paid, everyone on time, the holidays and the benefits and whatnot. And then I also oversee the general accounting to make sure that all of our financial transactions are recorded properly, making sure that our auditors, have everything that they have, making sure that our quarterly reports, making sure that are submitted. SEO, we have a lot of agencies where we have to submit reports to, so I oversee all of that. A typical day, again, because I do oversee a lot of the areas, it's never dull, it's never repetitive. There's always something going on. Coming in, I obviously check emails, make sure that I prioritize my day, making sure of the deadlines that I have to be done for that day of anything, especially now that we're getting close to year end. Our year end closes June 30, so making sure that we have everything done so that we're able to close the books on time, make sure that, we have our auditors coming in and, get with my day, so.
Wow, that's you have 600 employees in the
It's
city?
about it's full-time and part-time.
Wow,
Yeah.
I live in Long Beach, not that far away from Carson, and I always think of Carson as being this little small city, but that's amazing.
Yeah, we have about 300 full-time, and then 300 part-time here and there with the parks and all that. So it does definitely add up.
Wow, that's great. Well, thank you for all that information. It's wonderful to learn a little bit more about somebody who's actually working in a city and kind of how a city functions. With that, let's go on to our next panelist. Ross, you're up.
Morning, everybody. My name is Ross Page. So I work for the IRS Internal Revenue Service for 12 years in the large and mid-size international division. So the IRS, they got two division, two compliance division. One is large and mid-size business, and the other one it's small business and self-employment business. So the large and mid-size international division pretty much conduct audit for taxpayer over 12 million and in asset, and the SBSE conduct audit for taxpayer anything under 10 million in asset. Okay, so I started with as a revenue agent in 2009. So I was promoted to a team manager 5 years ago. So currently I'm managing about a group of, I want to say 8 to 10 revenue agents out of Long Beach post of duty. So prior to join the Internal Revenue Service, I work as, in accounting firms and, accounting fields for about 15 years. And I have a master's degree from Golden Gate University in Master in Taxation. And I graduated from Cal Poly Pomona in BS Accounting. So the nature of our job as a revenue agent is mainly we plan and conduct an examination of corporation, partnership, foreign entities, individuals, and fiduciary. And so we advise taxpayer their rights and in examinations, and also ensure that appropriate tax adjustments are made, and then ensure appropriate tax penalty and interest determination for the exam. And then finally, we, as a team, we communicate the tax result with taxpayer. So mainly most of our audit conduct with the taxpayer and a taxpayer representative, which is either a certified public accountant or attorneys. Okay, so for a typical day for us, usually it's when the case. So I usually assign a examination to the revenue agents. And then we review, the tax return for any potential audit areas, and then we work as a team. So the agent usually send out an audit letter to the taxpayer that are being selected for examination. And then during the process, we talk to the representative, the taxpayer, in securing documentation, for the examination on the area that we're selecting for examination. So then after that, we discuss tax assessment with the POA then draft a notice proposed adjustment on the items. And then finally, the last item is we work as a team as closing out the examination for the audit. So that's all. Thank you.
Ross, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Obviously the IRS, audits people's tax returns or businesses' tax returns, perhaps finds errors or mistakes, and it assesses the business with some kind of a fee or a penalty. But there's also people who are intentionally cheating on their tax returns. So how do you work with law enforcement? Because I'm presuming you are the one that provides the evidence to, who do you work with? The Department of Justice, the local district attorney? How does that work?
So usually if, so the tax system is more like honest system, right? So you do it properly. But if we come out, let's say you're looking at examination and there's an intent, like potential tax fraud, and we have internal like the department was a fraud division that can handle that. So but we have to create like a pattern of a number of years that the taxpayer is abusive, very aggressive tax return and potential fraud there. Then we can make a referral after we gather the facts information that determine that the taxpayer is really have potential fraud there. So we make a referral to potential fraud. And then if the case is really excessive, that we refer to a CI. A criminal investigation, CI, within the IRS. So we have two divisions on that.
Wow, very, very interesting. Okay, thank you, Ross. With that, we're going to turn to our final panelist. I'm hoping we've saved the best for last. Tarek, take it away.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having me. My name is Tariq Romani. I'm born and raised in Morocco. I'm now the finance director for the city of Carson. To tell you what I do is I just follow what Claudia tells me what to do. So we both work together. She's very sharp, and can't really be more grateful to be working with such an amazing accounting manager. So briefly, my path to local government finance have been, I would say, interesting. Back in high school, I remember was very excited to join an international program in Tunisia and France, where I studied agricultural economics, actually. And my research began when I worked with the International Center of Agricultural Research in dry areas, which headquarters in Lebanon. So we did the research about how do farmers make decisions in dry areas, considering lack of capital, lack of water, etc. And in that moment, Michael, I met two individuals. I'm very grateful to Professor Frank Ward, New Mexico State University, and Brian Hurd, who is in USDA. They invited me to continue to work on the Rio Grande Basin. So I did some water resource management, and so by profession, I'm an economist, you can call it, and a researcher. And my first jump into local government was when I joined the city of Seattle, right after I graduated as a senior economist during the recession. The city was forming what we call an economist panel, which would help the city council and the community understand how recessions really affect the city's resources with economic forecasting of revenues and expenditures, understanding the business community. And that's how I started, basically understanding how important is local government. And I haven't always been passionate about local government because I believe that's where residents really engage with their elected officials and business community to shape their government. And I'm always interested, as I always tell Claudia, in the big picture. I want to know not only how the financial resources and, as Cindy said, the accountability of color of money, how it's spent. I'm more interested into the complexity of departments and governments and how they work and how you can deliver services. So we play a lot of roles. Sometimes you find us, Claudia and I, finding solutions to complex problems that are not necessarily finance, but we're trying to put all the teams together, departments together, agencies together. But one of the things also that in my career I also want to highlight is similar to the SCAG. Back in Seattle, I managed two intergovernmental agencies. One is called the Community Alliance, and one is called E-City Gov Alliance. And these government agencies work to put together all the cities and counties to work together and providing solutions instead of working in silos. And I think something that I'm sure Cindy now knows, that the SCAG is trying to make these complex numbers of cities, whether in LA County or Orange County, and how we can all think about problems such as affordable housing, transportation, etc., instead of thinking about it from one prism. And one thing I will say is the finance, especially the finance profession in local government, is exciting and is very interesting because it allows you to see not only how the resources of taxpayers' money is coming in, but it also gives you an eye view into how these investments are made into the communities.
That's very interesting. Now, Tarek, you're also involved in, and I know it was in one of the emails I got, but I don't have it in front of my hands, but you're involved in some intergovernmental body right now, are you not?
Correct. I mean, as you can see, I'm new to the Southern California government. So I've been very fortunate to be elected now the second vice president of the California League of Cities. My role basically is to make sure that the local government agencies, cities and counties have the best information available for them so they can tackle the issues in their communities in a streamlined manner. So we do kind of connect between how policy is derived in Sacramento or in the federal level, and we try to make that simplified and bring it back to the cities. We continue the channel of communications between whether it's the state in Sacramento or DC, and we collectively try to make that information friendly and accessible to our fellows, city managers and finance directors.
It's interesting to understand that just as businesses in a particular industry may work together for a common cause, so government agencies that have common interests also work together for a common cause. And of course, that just provides opportunity for somebody who's working within one of those government agencies to communicate and discuss and talk and learn from people in other similar agencies. So that's very interesting. One of the things, and I just wanted to do a roundtable here from everybody, is ask you what accounting degree that you have. Does everybody here have a CPA?
I don't.
Okay, so Keegan, you don't have a CPA. Ross?
I have a CPA, yes.
Okay, CPA. Claudia?
Yeah. I have-
CPA. Cindy?
Yes.
And Tarek?
No.
Okay, so I think that's important because I know I find this that at the university, a lot of accounting students come to me and say, well, is there a career in accounting without a CPA? They believe that to have a career in accounting, you've got to have a CPA. And I'm glad to know that that's not necessary. You can have a very successful, well-paying career in accounting without having a CPA. But there are other accounting designations. Does anybody have a CMA, which is a certified management accountant, I believe? Okay, probably because most CMAs, I think, are working in management, probably in business. What about there's, I think the CIA, Certified Internal Auditor. Does anybody have that designation? No. Okay, so there are different paths you can take as an accountant: CPA, CMA, CIA, or none of the above. Are there any other, is there any particular designation for, I'm wondering, a government accountant specialist? Does something like that exist?
The GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, the National Association for Government Finance Officers, does offer a certification as a certified public finance officer. So that is also something that can be pursued, especially if you're interested in a career in government.
Okay, so hang on. What was that again, so I can write it down, Cindy?
Sure, it's GFOA is the one who offers a certification, and it's called Certified Public Finance Officer.
Certified Public Finance Officer. Okay, well, wonderful. So there's an option for somebody who may want to go into government accounting, but who perhaps wants something as an alternative to a CPA or a CMA. Sorry, go ahead.
The DCAA, actually, we have a couple additional DoD certifications we get. So they're more specific to Department of Defense, but there's a financial management certification that really you're required to get, but they give you all the tools and everything you need to get that, as well as the Defense Acquisition Workforce Improvement Act certification, or a DWIA is what we call it for short. So those are two things that we have to have, and everything, all the tools you need to get that are provided. And while I don't have a CPA, the agency itself encourages that, and we actually pay for the study materials, you know, your Becker or whatever review course you want to take. We pay for the exam, as well as giving you time off to take the exam. And then once you complete all 4 parts, you do receive a bonus. So
Wow,
not required, but encouraged.
That brings up an interesting topic, because we know for people who work in business, in industry, a lot of businesses will pay for and provide funding for their employees to get education and training. It could be job-specific training, it could be industry-specific training. And obviously some of it may have certifications to it or designations. But just maybe we could just go around and talk about what each of your what each of your employers not only provide, but I think the additional question is, what do they expect in terms of ongoing training and education so that a person can improve themselves? And maybe, let's see, Ross, maybe we'll start with you on that question.
So the IRS encourage everyone to have a certified CPA too if they want to pursue that area. And internally we have somebody who can certify the hours as far as it gets the CPA hours. The requirement under the general CPA under the general the G. But we offer training trroughout the year. When the new tax law come out. And in addition to that, there's some, like other training, throughout, like, like online training. So, throughout that, and then we provide a lot of training throughout each year, based on what they need, and then they offer some other time off to study for the training too, if they want to have time to do that. And then I think when you get certified, just depending on the budget. We kind of reimburse the license with that too. It's just depending on we have the budget. So that's all we have.
Okay. Claudia, what about at the City of Carson?
Yeah, so the City of Carson actually offers a professional service stipend every year. And if someone starts like in the middle of the year, it's just prorated throughout. So they do expect us to, continue to develop ourselves, continue to attend, conferences and whatnot. That's how they, allow us to pay for like my continuing education, any memberships. I actually belong to the CSMFO, which is the California Society of Municipal Finance Officers. Every year I go to their conference. This year it was virtual, so it was a little different, obviously, but that's where you continue, like your networking and whatnot. And especially I think in my role, since I have to continuously keep up to date with, any payroll, like payroll new guidance, any of the CalPERS benefits, any of that, like there's always webinars that obviously were provided to attend. Those are approved and paid through by the city. So they give you a stipend, and then they also pay for like the approved webinars and stuff like that we attend to. So
okay, well that's great. I want to get a little personal with each one of you here for my next question. I recall having lunch with an attorney friend of mine who was retiring, and I said to him, I'm surprised you're retiring. You're such a successful attorney. I would think you would just continue to practice as long as you could. And he said, Mike, I think I've hated every single day I spent in the office in my entire career. I'm so glad. I never want to go to court ever again. I never want to look at a legal contract ever again. I'm done. And I thought, how sad that this guy who was about 60 years old had spent the last 30 years doing something he didn't really like. So I'd like to ask each of you about job satisfaction. You like what you're doing? Do you not like what you're doing? What could be better about it? What could be worse about it? And maybe Tarek, will start off with you.
Thanks, Michael. I think that's a very important question. That really gives you a balance between satisfaction in life and satisfaction in the workplace. For me personally, Michael, there's always challenges at work, but me personally, I love what I do. And I think I always tell Claudia, and I share with her, is when you find a profession where you really enjoy what you do, you don't feel like working every day. And that also gives you the shield of those tough days that may come your way. I mentioned to you earlier that I'm not only the finance aspect of it or the policy aspect of it. I always look at the bigger picture. There's one of the advices I used to get from one of my mentors, Michael. It tells me, hey, Tariq, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. Well, what she meant by cheating is you have to continue to look what other cities are doing, other agencies are doing, what SCAG or out of state. And that keeps you on the edge, keeps you on the learning aspect. And I'll go back to what Claudia said, for instance, what City of Carson does. It basically lets you decide your learning and create your satisfaction about your job yourself. So there's one aspect of giving, like Claudia said, the stipend, that's for you personally. That money that you get every year at the beginning of the year gives you the opportunity to choose which associations and institute you want to join. Cindy said the GFOA is a great organization, and also CSMFA here in California. But most of these organizations, Michael, they require a membership, paid membership. So the city one that gives you that money on an annual basis, they don't tell you register for X, Y, and Z. They tell you to choose your own growth, where you want to learn more, which associations. And then there's the second aspect, let's Claudia mentioned, which is the training that you want to also attend. Those training, Michael, are two portions. One is the things that you personally choose you want to go and learn, and the city pays for those. And then there's the other side of it, which is some of the trainings are required. I'm sure, as Cindy and Claudia mentioned, they are certified public accountant. They have to keep up with the credit, and they have to continue to get credit. And those are something that you're going to keep up with to continue to keep your certified public accounting certificate in place. So it's not only about finding a good job, but sometimes the organizations plays a role into making that equation of making your job satisfactory, that you enjoy coming to work, and that they don't only care about what you do, they also care about your growth in the professional career.
Okay, thank you, Tarek. Let's, Keegan, I'll get same question to you. Are you satisfied? Are you happy? Are you fulfilled with what you're doing?
Yes, I am. I do enjoy what I do. It is challenging, but it is rewarding. You know, we work for the Department of Defense, we work for the taxpayer. And a lot of the audits we do, we see immediate impacts in terms of dollars that we saved. And I'm not talking thousands, we're talking millions. So there is that rewarding factor there that, you know, you're doing your civic duty, making a difference. You know, and the variety of work is one thing that keeps this fresh. We're not doing the same thing every day. We do over 60 types of audits, and those can vary in length from, you know, 30 days to up to an entire year, depending on the complexity and size and structure of the business. But by and large, you know, you're working on something different constantly. And another thing that I find that really helps my satisfaction with working for the Department of Defense is the work-life balance. You know, we work 40 hours a week. Occasionally the job demands more than that. And, you know, we have a job to do. We do have deadlines, dates, things we need to meet. But by and large, the work-life balance is fantastic. And that's a very important to me personally. And one of the things that I really do appreciate about this particular job.
That is something that's really important. And I know for those who have taken their CPA and who've gone and worked for a company like one of the major accounting firms, that when you're out there getting your CPA, if you're working for a, you know, Deloitte Touche or a PwC or something, the work requirements can be very, very extensive with very, very long hours. So that's good to know that that your employer, at least the agency you work for, has a respect for that and controls that. Ross, how about you? Are you happy in your job? Do you like what you're doing? Is it fulfilling?
So prior to, you know, the working for the IRS, I was always interested in, you know, challenging work and interesting work. And, you know, in addition, I was looking for opportunity and growth for advancement, right? The IRS is a perfect place to that offer that. Okay, so they offer challenging, interesting work. From a wide, you're dealing with taxpayers from various industry, and you'll be able to apply your experience. And another thing is providing job security, great benefits, and diversity workforce. And on a daily basis, we're able to apply tax law, recent tax law changes from a different industry to a taxpayer, and we always working, with CPAs and attorneys to resolve tax matter. So I really enjoy it with IRS for the last 10 years. Comparing to private and public accounting, this is way much better than that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ross. And Cindy, same question to you.
Sure, I think that's a great question, because at the end of the day, that's what we're all hoping for, right? Is satisfaction and fulfillment in what we dedicate our lives to. And I absolutely have that in my job. I having a college student who's facing the same decisions, there's that expression, do find what you're passionate for and never work a day in your life. And I'm not a fan of that expression because I'm an accountant, and I'm not passionate about accounting per se, but I am good at accounting, and I like numbers and I like analysis. And what I'd like to do is to successfully apply skills I'm good at a mission that I'm tied to. And that's ultimately what leads to the satisfaction in my job, is that I really do care about why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I like that I add value to that process in a meaningful way. I really like to sing, but I'm really bad at it. So it's not a good career choice for me. So even though I might be passionate about it, I wouldn't be successful, and I wouldn't be fulfilled right in that area. So I think we need to take the pressure off the college kids a little bit with that, because what I love about accounting and what I've experienced in my career is I've been able to take these skills, and they're so transferable to so many different types of organizations. So you can really align with what really speaks to you, and that is what's been super fulfilling. So I've really liked the diversity of it, and I've really liked being able to feel like I'm contributing to making things better than what they were before. And to also agree with what Keegan said about work-life balance. I mean, there are certainly times where I will work long hours, and I don't mind them because I know it's meaningful and it's necessary. But I do like that in general, my experience with government, both at my position at the city of Burbank as well as now at SCAG, when you are working to make the quality of life of the community better, you also have to have that same attitudes towards your employees and towards your workforce. And I think because of that, it tends to provide a better work-life balance, because you don't want to kill the quality of life of your staff or your community, right? You want it balanced across the board. So I think overall it provides a great balance, and a really, it's kind of a role model that you want, private employers to kind of take on as well when you look towards the care that you give your staff and employees.
Yeah, that's really nice to hear. You're obviously a very caring person. I think I'd like to work for you. You brought up something I've often said to students, particularly students who do well in my accounting classes. I'd say, well, why don't you consider going into accounting? And then they said, well, I don't want a career in accounting. But I like to think of it, accounting is really not so much of a career as accounting is a tool. Accounting is a tool that you use to accomplish something. Okay, and each of you are accomplishing something different using accounting as the basic tool to accomplish that. Whether you're managing a city, whether you're managing a group of government agencies, whether you're auditing government contracts, whether you're auditing tax returns to make sure taxes are being collected properly. So really what each of you is doing is using accounting as a tool to accomplish something. And I'd like to think each one of you is accomplishing something for the greater good. It's something that is important, it's meaningful, and it's helping society. So I think that's I think that's very important for people to understand it's your career, you're using accounting as a tool, but you're going to choose a path in your career that's going to accomplish something. Hopefully it's something you want to accomplish. Okay, Claudia, your turn.
Yeah, I mean, I am pretty satisfied. Like just when you were talking about the whole external audit and the long hours, it just gave me a little bit of, flashback. And even then, at that point in time, I was working the very long hours, the very like weekends and whatnot. But I think in any opportunity that you have, any work, your team is what makes or breaks, right? It makes it so much easier. Yeah, it's like I do have, like, I love that I have the work balance now. I do love that, I do live 5 minutes away. I am making an impact. I do see the changes that I'm doing at the community. But I think I also have been very, very lucky to come across so many amazing individuals that work for the city, the Tariqs in the world, the like other finance colleagues in the world, so I think they also play a huge part in your job satisfaction, right? Because if you have a set of individuals that have the same goal, not necessarily that think exactly like you, but are aiming toward the same thing, I think your job makes it, that much more satisfied, right? You're reaching for the same like just achievements, and that's just an extra ally that you have on your side to kind of make improvements. So I think that on top of what everyone said, I think the teams that the people that I found here definitely have made that extra extra satisfaction. So
that's wonderful. It's something else I always try and stress with my students is that environment is important. Education is important. The tools you have to use are important, but one of the most important things that I think all of us as professionals deal with is our relationships with other people. And I think we all found this out during the period of COVID and all being locked in our houses, how important those relationships are. A lot of the people we work with, we're close to, they're a sense of purpose for us, whether it's helping them or working with them. There's a sense of enjoyment we get out of associating with those people. A lot of them become friends, and so I would just urge everybody listening today, as you move forward, yes, career is important, education is important, but don't leave aside those personal relationships. They're really what make the difference. And, I think back to jobs I had 30 years ago. I don't think about the great journal entries I made or the great spreadsheets I did or the great, profits the company made. I think about the people many I still know today that I worked with 30 years ago who are still friends and colleagues and people I could still pick up the phone and talk with and ask for advice, or perhaps, go out for a cocktail with. So certainly make that part of your evolution as a working individual. We have a number of participants. We don't have any questions in the Q&A. I can continue to ask questions for as long as this session is going to last. I love asking questions and listening to people, finding out more about people. But please, if you're a participant, use the Q&A section to ask a question. I love to have your questions as well as mine. We've got these 5 panelists here. They work in 5 different areas of government. They're all experienced, they're knowledgeable, and they're here to share what they know with you. So please, if you have a question, please put it in the Q&A. And as there is no questions in the Q&A, I'm going to move on and ask some more questions. So it is, I'm thinking about the choice that somebody who's starting a career has. And the choice, it maybe isn't that cut and dried, but someone can go work for a for-profit organization, a business, as we typically think of them in the United States. Some people choose to work for nonprofits, the United Way or other charities. But I think the divide is the people who work for businesses and the people who work for some form of government agency. And I'd like to know, in each of your career paths, was this an intentional, yes, I planned on this, I'm seeking a job in a government agency, or was it, you know, I sent out resumes everywhere I could, and this is the first place that hired me. So maybe we can start off with Cindy on that one.
Sure. Boy, you know, remembering back to my college days and the career choices at the beginning, I think I definitely was unsure of myself, and in the sense of I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know a lot about the different options that were out there. So I went mainstream. It seemed the less risky. So it was go into public accounting. You wanted to have one of the big four firms. I was fortunate to get a job with KPMG. So I would say it was a very, you know, unintentional on my part. I was just doing what the masses told me to do because I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted. And while I was working at, you know, KPMG in public accounting, it was, you know, very clear, while it was a great learning experience, it wasn't really a long-term option for me because the hours were, you know, incredibly intense. And a partner that I worked for quite a bit at KPMG was hired as the CFO for Ticketmaster, and ultimately that's what led to my position. So back to your point about relationships, and you know, that being so important, and ultimately what can, you know, make or drive your career is having those successful working relationships with people and bringing them along. Because I mean, I don't want to speak for the other panelists, but I will mentor somebody that I like to work with and has a good attitude and good relationships all day long over taking somebody who maybe is more technically strong, but just perhaps a difficult personality to work with. So anyways, based on that relationship and that, you know, and that trust, I went to go work for Ticketmaster, and I was there, you know, 14 years. I would say my very first intentional decision was when I went to work in government, and I went and I applied for that City of Burbank position. It was the first time that I really asked myself about the mission that I wanted to be part of. Like, how was I going to really feel fulfilled? Up until then, I was truly motivated by profit motive. You know, profit motive for a Ticketmaster, certainly profit focused, for-profit business, and you know, and for myself, you know, being successful and climbing the corporate ladder, if you will. And having gone through that, I was still missing that happiness, that connection, you know, to what I was doing. So it was, you know, unfortunately kind of took me a while. It took me 18 years of work before I finally asked myself that question of how am I going to feel happy about what I do? And I pursued that job at the City of Burbank. So yes, that decision was very intentional, and I've not regretted it for 1 minute, despite, you know, the compromises that maybe I made leaving a position as VP of Finance for Ticketmaster. But it was a great choice for me, and I've been very happy with it. So so my career has been a combination of both intentional and unintentional, but very happy when I actually did put the thought into it and was mature enough to make those decisions, albeit a little later than most, perhaps, when they get to that point.
That's great. You mentioned working with people, and the people who are, you know, difficult to work with. And in my book, the interview, the key to landing a job, the interview, I call them zebras. And the reason I do that is because, you ever wonder why we ride horses and not zebras? I mean, they look pretty much the same, right? Zebras have stripes and horses don't. The reason we don't ride zebras is because zebras don't get along with people. Zebras don't even get along with other zebras. And so that's why we ride horses, because horses get along with people and they get along with each other. And I'll tell you, if there's any career advice I can give to anybody, is don't be a zebra. The biggest thing you need to do is figure out how to get along with other people. And if you can, that can make up for a lot of lack of ability and a lack of skill. And I'll just give one example. I hope he's not listening. Well, he won't be listening, but a very good friend of mine who I went to MBA school with, retired recently. He was the CEO of a a multi-billion-dollar international corporation. And I had to help him complete his assignments in MBA school. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't have passed. But I'll tell you, that guy could carry on a conversation with a doorknob. He's just the most personable, engaging, caring person you ever want to meet. And again, billion-dollar corporation, far more money than I ever earned in my life. Okay, we've got some, I'm going to change tracks here because we actually have some questions from our participants. And so I'm going to start with first question here from Christina. It says, thank you for all the valuable information. Are internships necessary to be considered a strong candidate for employment opportunities? So I'm going to just throw this out to the panel, whoever would like to address that. But are internships, do you think is that considered something that's considered when you're hiring people in your organizations? Nobody wanted to? Well, Keegan.
All right. I'll jump in. Okay.
Okay, Cindy's going to jump.
I apologize. I would say work experience is certainly a relevant factor when you're looking to hire somebody, and an internship is part of work experience. But I would say in government, what's probably more compelling is your tie to the mission behind why you want that position. Why do you want to work for that organization? Why does it align with your core values? And I think you can overcome, it's certainly not insurmountable, is my point with an internship. I mean, certainly if you can get it, it's great experience and you should pursue it, but it's not necessary. And I think what the more important is for you to be able to articulate why you align with the mission of the organization that you're applying to and how you want to help make a difference.
Anybody else want to talk about internships at all?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Most of, for the DCAA at least, we hire at entry level positions. We do offer internships, but there's not that many of them, and it's definitely not a requirement by any means. Like Cindy said, it's good experience. You know, that experience factor is always helpful when, you know, applying for a job. If you've been in a professional environment before, if you've done similar type work, if, you know, you've got a taste for what it is you may be doing with whatever job you're looking into. I always kind of thought of internships as more for you, like, hey, do I like this? Is this something I'm really interested in? Is this something I want to pursue further? More so than I have to do this in order to get to the next step. That was kind of how I always viewed it.
Okay, Tarek, did you want to
Yes,
comment?
thanks, Michael. I think, like Cindy and Keegan said, they're not mandatory. You don't really have to do them if you get a chance to apply for a position that you think will fit what you want to do. But internships are available, and internships are opportunities as well. Me personally, I have done internships during my undergrad every summer, and that gave me the opportunity to go and see how work is done, how people interact, you know, help through the process. And I also want to share that there have been some great stories. Me personally, I've seen folks who started with internship and they ended with an amazing career in government. They ended up being city managers. They ended up being even elected officials into their communities. And Claudia and I would also say that we always love when we see the student from Dominguez Hills coming in to help us. Amazing and sharp, and they come into us and we have so many stories to tell about some individuals. We're not going to mention anyone by name, but they incredibly absorb the work. They realize that they lack the work to do. They don't only learn, but they also bring innovative ideas. They bring in, well, I think I did this work with my professor, and I will wonder if I can apply the same thing here. So I think internship cannot be discounted. Sometimes can be your beginning to an amazing career in government.
Yeah, I would add a couple of things. First of all, something that Cindy said about, and this kind of actually leads into the next question that was asked, because one of the our participants asked about that they're applying for an accounting specialist job. What are some interview tips? And I think, well, Cindy gave a great one there, is is you need to understand the mission of the organization that you're going to work for. And at some point in time during the interview, you want to express that you're aligned with that mission in some way. And I'll give you a perfect example of what not to do. I was on a panel or a group. We were recruiting a new professor, and I teach at Cal State Dominguez Hills. Cal State Dominguez Hills, has a focus on educating students who maybe can't get into some of the more prestigious universities. People who are perhaps disadvantaged, people who are first generation. That's kind of our mission. And we asked as a panel one of our questions to a professor, and not a PhD in accounting. And the question was, well, why do you want to work at Dominguez Hills? Now, if that person had read the university's mission statement, they would have been able to come back with, I want to help disadvantaged people. I want to help underserved communities. No, the person came back and said, I want to live in Southern California. That's the wrong thing to say. Now, you may want to live in Southern California, but if you're interviewing with an organization, and I think this holds true whether it's a government agency or a business, you want to indicate that you have some interest and some alignment with what that organization does. If you're going to work in Keegan's organization, you want to have some interest in government contracts and perhaps in the military. If you don't show any interest in that, it's going to be a little more difficult. In terms of internships, I would say this. And I think Claudia said, it's not so much the internship, it's job experience. What you need is experience. And I know at my university, we kind of have a policy that internships have to be paid internships. We're not going to send somebody out to work for free. But I have a friend of mine who owns a fairly substantial real estate development company. And he presented at one of my classes, and one of my students called him up. I don't want an internship. Can I just hang around your office and learn what you do? He said, sure. He went in, he spent 3 months hanging around the office, learning what they did for free, didn't even get paid for it. And he was able to go out and get himself a job with another real estate development company, a very good paying job, because he had 3 months worth of experience in real estate development, and he was able to talk the talk. So that is something to consider. The more job experience you have, whether it's paid or unpaid, whether it's a volunteer, whether it's with businesses, government agencies, get as much experience you can doing anything. It's going to help when you sit down for that job interview. So let's go back to our question from our participants. Interview tips. So let's ask the panel, how many of you are actually involved in the hiring process? Okay, hands up. Okay, so 4 of you are. So Claudia, let's start off with you. As somebody doing the interviewing, what could you tell a candidate about things that they should do during the interview to increase their chance of getting the job?
It's funny because we just actually interviewed yesterday. We just went through interviews yesterday for one of the accountant positions that is available here at the city. So yes, I think to Cindy's point, and I couldn't agree more. I definitely do appreciate someone that is, well-spoken, has the experience, has seen it all, and not it all. But are they trainable? Are you willing and able to learn? The new procedures here at the city? Because I think what I was seeing is a lot of people come from different backgrounds. Yesterday alone, we had people coming from private or from being an audit background or being like that, right? So it is different. Accounting is accounting, but it is different, you know, a different environment. So I want to make sure and get that feel of your energy of learning. Are you going to be able to come in and ask me questions? I think it's just your ability to portray that enthusiasm, that interest, making sure that you do let them know, hey, I really do, like, I've never done this before, but I'm okay. I'm learning. This is if you don't have experience per se in government, use your past experience and somehow tie it into what you're currently looking for, right? So obviously looking at the job bulletin, making sure you have an answer of how your experience applies to what that organization is looking at. I think it's very key. Because not everyone is going to have that experience or those job specs that, you know, I'm currently looking at, but then you bringing in your personal, both professional and personal examples, like, I think it's key. So make sure that you do have answers for, even if you haven't had, you know, have gone through that, bring something in or think about how you would assess that situation or just give, you know, how would you just potentially deal with the matter. So I think that's key.
Okay, let's see, Keegan.
Claudia made a great point. One thing that we definitely look for when we're interviewing potential candidates is not just to answer the question, you know, what are your strengths? What is your experience with this? What do you know about our agency? But, you know, really elaborate, explain how you demonstrate that strength or how you're working to improve in this area. Tell us about how your past experiences can relate to what we're asking now, as far as, you know, what would make you a good fit? Why do you want to do this? What is your experience with X, Y, or Z? You know, you may not have specific, exactly what we do experience, but you can almost always, whether it's classroom work, working in team projects, working in other jobs, you know, tie that in some way back to what we're asking. And that is one of the big things that we look for. How well can you articulate and explain that, and you know, enthusiasm and energy along with that as well.
Okay, Tara, your thoughts.
Thank you, Michael. Claudia is correct. Me and her had a conversation yesterday about hiring for a position, and we always think about the same thing, that is for us, learning on people who really believed in us when they gave us the opportunity to work, and for us is to pay it forward. By saying that is, every employer, when you come in front of them and they look at your resume, sometimes they do even test you up front before you come in to the interviews. When you go through the process, what everybody is looking for is that person who's going to be an element of positive change into the organization. I told Claudia this, is that I learned that there's always three essential things that you have to think about when you are in that interview room. You have to present them, and you have to kind of justify the fact that you have the energy, you have the intelligence, and you have the integrity that you are going to come in, and you have to develop your own tool, whether it's with the SCAG or City of Carson, City of Long Beach. You have to start building that confidence and building that tool for you that you will use in any organization you're going to go, how you're going to learn about the organization, how you're going to learn about the culture. And as you said, Michael, how you're going to build those relationships with staff and people around you. Because at the end of the day, like Michael said, you're going to forget the reports you created, you're going to forget all those things, but you will never forget how people made you feel and how you made them feel. So go with confidence, go with the fact that you spent time at the university, you built that intelligence. Now, the other two aspects is the energy. Every one of us want someone who always go in and is solution oriented, communicates not only the problems, but also potential solutions, and build that confidence. Learn about the employee you are going to be sitting with. Do your research as much as you can. Learn about what their challenges are, what are the things they're trying to do, their mission and vision and priorities, and think about it and see how you're going to go to this organization and how you're going to take it to the next level.
Excellent. Cindy, your thoughts.
Thank you. My co-panelists here have done a great job of expressing a lot of the really important criteria. I guess I'll just add that, for this panel specifically, obviously, most if not all of you are coming in with little to no relevant work experience. And as hiring managers, we have about an hour in an interview to kind of get a feel for you and who you are as a person and what you're going to bring. So I guess my advice would be, to think about what does a hiring manager want, right? We want somebody with a positive attitude who's going to bring a fresh energy to the job, especially if you're entry level. Some of us have been around a long time. We're a little more tired. You don't get to be tired. You're like the fresh guns. You're going to come in with a positive attitude and high energy. And you want to make sure that you convey that in that interview, that you are eager, willing, and ready to kind of get in and help make a difference. And, circling back to where we started earlier on this panel about being tied to the mission, when we talked about our job satisfaction, and what we all reiterated is that we're tied to our mission, and therefore that has led to a lot of job satisfaction. So we want to know that you're going to be tied to the mission so that you'll have job satisfaction, because we're numbers people. Statistically, that simply means you're going to be a better employee if you are tied to our mission. And we're just looking for the highest odds of success, for our organization and selfishly for us. So, make sure that when you go in there, you're talking about what you're going to provide to the organization and not focus on what the organization is going to provide to you. So, just kind of keep that in mind when you go into those interviews. So be on time, because we only get one time to know if you're going to be a reliable employee. So get there on time, be there early, be respectful, be prepared to answer questions about the mission, have some questions prepared. And shoot, I just lost my train of thought on something I was going to tell you, but I think those are kind of the real thing. Is like, it's an entry level job. So really we're looking for attitude and your willingness to learn and to be tied. And we're looking for you to bring some energy to the organization. So that would be, if you're not portraying that, if you're low energy and, you're most likely not going to be very successful with that position. So keep that in mind when you walk in there. Of course, we're all rooting for each and every one of you.
As I say in my book, The Key to Landing a Job, the interview is where it happens. You need a resume. The resume gets you in the door. But believe me, I have hired people whose resume was not necessarily the best resume, but the person performed during the interview. And I'll just add a couple of thoughts to what my colleagues here have said. One is, if you're a person who doesn't have a lot of experience, try and look back at what you've done and create experience. And I'll give you two examples. Both students of mine, both of them asked me, "Professor, could you help me with my resume?" And one of them, he had very little job experience. And I said, "Well, what have you done?" He said, "Oh, I parked cars." I said, "Okay, well, tell me about that." He said, "Well, yeah," he said, "weekends to make money through college, and I've been parking cars." I said, "Where do you park cars?" "Oh, Beverly Hills." I said, "Where in Beverly Hills?" And he mentioned the name of one of the very fancy restaurants in Beverly Hills. I said, "Well, I presume that place, what are the cars like?" "Oh," he says, "I've parked Maseratis and Porsches and Lamborghinis." I said, "Well, you did a lot more than parking cars. Somebody entrusted you with $200,000 or $300,000 worth of machinery." And I said, "How many accidents did you have?" He said, "I've never had an accident." And I said, "And you had to deal with people going to fancy restaurants who some of those people can be a little difficult to deal with, shall we say?" "Oh, yeah," he said, "all the time, celebrities and what have you." Well, I said, "Put that on your resume. That's significant. The fact that you worked in an environment where people entrusted you to with cars that were worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that never got in an accident a single time, never dinged a single car in 2 years. And in addition to that, you had to deal with people that could be extremely difficult to deal with, movie stars and celebrities who probably think a lot more of themselves than they should." I said, "That's something to be put on your resume." And so we were able to craft something on that. I had another gentleman who was a veteran, and he just put on his resume, you know, United States military and whatever it was, 8 years or whatever. I said, well, that doesn't tell me anything. I said, I've never served in the military. What did you do? Oh, he said, I was in charge of a vehicle pool. I said, what does that mean? Well, he said, I was over in Iraq. And he said, I was in charge of like 15 mechanics, and our job was to keep 400 vehicles running. And every day, all these vehicles would come in from the desert. They'd be, you know, clogged up this and clogged up that. And things would be working, and we had to work all night long to get those vehicles ready for when the troops went out the next morning. I said, well, why don't you put that on your resume? That's significant. So think about what you've done. You may be underestimating the experience you have. And, you know, again, if you're just coming out of college, you're not expected to have a huge amount of experience. I'll give you a third one. I had a gentleman who was telling me that he had done a mission. He was a Mormon. I'm not super familiar with the Mormon religion, but he had done a mission. And I said, you know, well, tell me about it. I said, I'm thinking he's standing on the street corner somewhere handing out pamphlets. He says, I spent 2 years in Africa building an irrigation project so that a village could irrigate their crops so they could feed themselves. Well, I said, why isn't that on your resume? That's amazing. I said, so I would just encourage you to think about what you've done in the past and to make sure you're really telling the story of who you are, because my experience is a lot of students who don't think they have much of a story to tell actually do have a story to tell. Okay, let's see. We have no more questions in the chat room, but I've got a question that I'd like to ask. You know, when we're making career decisions, the career decision we make can have a very long-term effect on our financial well-being over a long period of time. You know, I always liken it to, you know, if you're going to work in an industry, do you want to go work in a dying industry or a growing industry? Where are you going to find more opportunity? In a business that you know, is kind of had its days, or in that new company that's up and growing? Well, when I think about government, what I'm interested in knowing is what is driving new jobs in your particular area that you work in. So maybe I'll start off. Ross, we haven't heard from you for a bit. Ross, what is driving the new jobs in the IRS? Or are there new jobs? Is it growing? Is it expanding? Or is it just kind of the same old?
So the IRS have you may know that I think the last hiring we had was, I think, in 2009 when Obama was in office. So back then, you know, we have significant hiring, and then since that, you may know that a lot of people that work for the IRS is, you know, for the government, it's they work for a number of years, right, over 20, 30 years. So a lot of people start retiring now. So the workforce is kind of reduction within the IRS itself. So you got, you know, LBNI, SPSC, a lot of people retiring each year, and the IRS hasn't been hiring, you know, significant of the employees, you know, throughout the last 10, 15 years. But now I think since we have new budget, so we start planning to hire a lot more for the next couple of years for replacement of the people that are retiring. So we kind of in the backlog right now. So going through this year and next year, we're gonna hiring a lot more, like, you know, talk about with the new budget. We plan to hire a lot more employees. So, you know, on the if you want to interested, just go out to usajob.gov and look at it. And there's a lot of potential you know, job opportunities for the next coming month, like within 12 months. Okay, there's a process, and you have to go through getting to that. You got to get your application ready, then fill out the questionnaires and then the process, interview, then it takes time to, get your application ready for that. But there's a lot of opportunity both within IRS. Like myself, I started 10 years ago and I became a manager, and then some other people came at the same time. They have opportunity to go different field like international or a computer auto specialist. And then then there's always appeals. They go to appeals or CI in criminal investigation if you came under under 37. So there's a variety of opportunity within the IRS. So different field, different division. So there's a lot of huge opportunities. So if you look at it, yeah, that's a good. As long as you step in first, and then if you work a couple of years and you have an opportunity to go into different field within IRS.
Yeah, very, very. I think I wish I knew the exact number because I don't. But if I'm not mistaken, I was reading a news article on one of the news websites that said the IRS was going to hire something like 70,000 new people. It's huge. So our participants may not understand is some government agencies, their hiring practices are a little different than a business. In business, if I've got an accounting department and my volume of accounts payable goes up by 20 or 30%, I say, well, you know what? I need a new person. I go out and add a person. But in a lot of government agencies, they're fixed in how their budgets work, and there's caps on the number of people. And all of a sudden what happens is they get way behind, like the IRS probably should have been hiring people in the past, and then they open the floodgates, and now there's a ton of opportunity. So, one of the things you want to be doing is following trends in terms of what's happening in government to find out where those opportunities are. Keegan, what about in your area?
A lot of the same of what Ross said. I believe the number it's over 50%. I don't know the exact number, but over 50% of our workforce is within 5 years of retirement age. The government has a defined retirement age with years of service, called minimum retirement age. So a lot of the hiring we're doing and have been doing the past couple of years is to replace that workforce that we anticipate to be retiring soon. As far as what drives us, defense spending hasn't gone down, and every year the budget for defense spending is perpetually increasing. So as we're buying more equipment, services, supplies for our military, we're there. So it's an industry we don't see going down anytime soon. Obviously, a lot of the future work is beyond our control. That's politicians, that kind of thing. But right now we don't anticipate that, and we are hiring actively because of that workforce. We anticipate kind of retiring in the near future. And I will say, in my time, I think the last time we did significant reduction in forces were in the 90s, the early 90s, for the Department of Defense, DCAA specifically. So it's one of those things that people that leave by and large do so voluntarily. It's not a, hey, we have too many people. That has not happened in quite some time.
And that's actually, Keegan, a real good point, because I know sometimes one of the concerns people have about going into any career is what is the likelihood of the organization that I'm working with going to go through some substantial upheaval that's going to cause me to lose my job. And of course, in private industry, we see that all the time. Some businesses just don't do well, so everybody gets laid off. Or as I like to say, the executives in the boardroom make some stupid mistake, and they come in and they say, "Oh my gosh, we're going to lose money. Fire 10% of the workers." You notice they always say fire 10% of the workers. They never say fire me for making the stupid mistake in the first place. But that's another story. Or like we have in California, the business environment changes. So companies like Honda say, shut everything down, we're all moving to Texas. Well, you may not want to move to Texas. So I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the advantages for working for a government agency is they tend to be stable. You know, the city of Carson is not going to hire an accounting team down in Houston, Texas. The city of Carson is going to have its offices in the city of Carson, and that's pretty much a given. So you've got a what I would call a propensity to stability in government organizations, whether it's the local level, the state level, the federal level. There's a greater likelihood that the organization will sustain and the jobs will be sustained. And as Keegan says, the people who are leaving are most likely leaving because they want a career change or they're retiring. It's not because the organization itself decided we're going to lay off 20 or 30% of the workforce. So what about at the local level, Claudia? Is the demand for people in your organization increasing, or is that pretty flat?
No, actually we are, like I mentioned just yesterday alone, we had an interview for our finance department. So yeah, I think that's a very common trend where, you know, Ross and Key were saying we do have, like, just let alone our finance team is getting a lot of people retiring, which obviously makes me happy, right? But then that just adds another layer of stuff that I have to, like, just when you think like your team is fulfilled and, you know, you have to go back and train. But like, I think yeah, I think it's definitely increasing. And just with like the pandemic, I think we did definitely get maybe like a couple of new positions, if I'm not mistaken, related more for, like, you know, the emergencies, like service manager, and tracking these FEMA costs, which, you know, we didn't have to do before. So things like that are definitely increasing. It they're not like increasing by a lot, but we're definitely going out there. And now that everything is opening back, we're going back and interviewing and hiring, like, for the positions that unfortunately had to be let go when the pandemic hit. So we're definitely hiring.
And Cindy, what are your thoughts? Just given that you've got your finger in a number of different organizations, what do you see across the board?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There's no question that job security at a, you know, working in a government position is certainly significantly higher than your average, you know, for-profit position. You know, I think there's no less than 3 rounds of layoffs while I worked 14 years at Ticketmaster, and none in my 10 years at the city of Burbank where we've ever had to lay off. That isn't to say, to Claudia's point, where we've frozen open positions and just chosen to not fill them in the time to get through, you know, certain economic cycles. But other than that, there is, like, you know, like we've, you know, said multiple times, there is a much higher level of commitment to your employees, and the culture feeds that, as well as civil service rules when you're part of a government organization feed into that and provide strength to that concept as well. As far as funding and what's driving new jobs in government, you know, there was a time when we thought technology was going to eliminate jobs. And I think we've come far enough to know that technology has in many ways done the opposite. It has created many new jobs. And with technology, the demand, I'm sure Tarek would agree to this, at the city of Carson, it certainly was the case at the city of Burbank, the demand by the community to have access to government services easier and not, you know, the old-fashioned way of having come into City Hall has driven the need for new programs, new way of doing business, and that has led to new jobs, at least both in the finance side as well as on the operational side of city government. At SCAG, where I currently work now, a lot of our new positions come from the federal government and the state government funding needs that are seen throughout our region. So I think a good example is the Regional Early Action Plan, which was a state initiative that pumped in hundreds of $millions into the state of California to address affordable housing. And in order to appropriately administer those new funds, we've certainly had to do some hiring on both the operational side as well as on the finance side. to make sure that we can get those dollars spent and start addressing the need. Certainly President Biden with the American Jobs Plan also generated some funding and a need for a higher demand of our services, which equates to more positions in our organization. So ultimately, I think what drives is community need. And when those needs are done, we seek out funding for them. And then we ultimately, it's people who deliver those services and fill that need. So that's ultimately what will drive the jobs in government. And that's one of the longest lasting industries. So it's certainly very, very stable and here to stay.
Well, you're right. Certainly consumer demand for services, citizens' demand for services, which we do seem to increasingly expect more and more of those services from, whether it's our local government or our state government or our federal government. I see one other drive, and that is government is just has this propensity to want to regulate and to tax, and the more regulations and the more taxes, the more job opportunities, because, and particularly for accounting people, because, you know, the state of California, the California Department of Taxation administers some 45 different taxes. Well, somebody's got to collect those taxes. Somebody's got to make sure those organizations that are paying the tax are submitting the taxes correctly. So somebody's got to account for all of that. Who accounts for it? The accountants do, of course. So every time the government comes up with new rules and new regulations, there's got to be a horde of people hired to administer and monitor and track all of that stuff. So that in itself, I think, is a huge driver of employment opportunities with government agencies. And, you know, once a government agency has initiated a program, it is extremely unlikely the program is completely scrapped and gotten rid of. I mean, I see that California Department of Taxation website. Every year I see 1 or 2 new taxes added, and I don't ever see a banner that says, hey, guess what? We've just stopped. We've deleted a whole bunch of taxes last year. I just don't see that happen. So that's great, because it provides growth opportunities for people who do want to work in a government setting. Let me ask one more question, because I've talked to some people who work in government agencies, and they've indicated that one of the problems with working in a government agency is you kind of get vested in that agency because of seniority and because of often union rules and often the way the pension plans work. And it almost gets to the stage where you work for that government agency for 10 or 15 years, you're never going to leave because you're now trapped because there's a substantial financial cost. The portability of your package, if you will, is not the same as, say, somebody who works for a company and they've got $500,000 saved up in their 401k and they go work for another company. They can just take their $500,000 401k with them. Is there any advice or thoughts that you might have on that particular question? And maybe Keegan, I'll go to you on that one.
So we actually do have, what's called the Federal Employee Retirement System, or FERS. It's a defined pension benefit plan. And we have what's called the Thrift Savings Plan, which is basically a 401k with agency matching. So we have both here. The 401k TSP, that moves if you were to choose to go. That's very simple rollover to a different IRA or 401k plan if you went private or even transferred within the government. I believe TSP is pretty well across all federal government, not just Department of Defense. But I will say the pension part, that is correct. That is 1% for every year you're there. And obviously if you leave, it stops, but you still collect. Say you work 10 years and you retire at age 60, you get 10% of your government salary in perpetuity. That's your pension. It doesn't go away.
Hmm.
And I think it vests, the pension vests in 3 years and or excuse me, 5 years, and the matching contributions vest after 3. So after that, you're free to go. It stays with you forever.
Okay, so whatever you've earned up to that point,
Yep.
it's going to stay with you. You go somewhere else, but you're going to be able to come back and collect that at the appropriate time down the road.
Correct.
Okay. What if you went to work for another department of the federal government? Would that count towards those number of years, or do you have to start over again?
It counts. Your annual leave balances, your sick leave balances, those transfer across government. Your federal, I believe the federal retirement is pretty much, the pension is pretty much all government as well. I know the TSP is. So I think that those would transfer intergovernmental. Wouldn't have to be just Department of Defense, could be energy, treasury, like IRS is part of treasury, so it could go there.
Gotcha. But there's no portability between, say, the federal government and if you say go to work for, say, the state of California.
Your TSP is essentially a 401k. I know if you go private, that can be rolled over into a 401k that you might start with a private institution. I'm not sure what state and local governments offer and how that works. I know here in Kansas, both my parents were municipal workers, and they're on what's called the Kansas Capers is what we call it. It's essentially a pension plan. So I don't know how that would work, but I do know if you had a 401k, it would go with you.
Okay, excellent. What about at a more local level, Claudia? What about at the city of Carson?
It's conceptually the same. We have actually CalPERS, it's California pension, it's kind of like the Capers. So yeah, that's true. That basically, I just learned this yesterday. If you wanted to go to like work, let's say I've only been here for 4, so I don't even, I'm not there yet. But once you're vested and once you have all that, like it's actually reciprocal to like Orange County. Orange County has OSERs or any of that stuff. So like you also keep everything that you vested. We do also have a Voya, which is kind of like a 401k. We do the city matches up to a certain amount, so you're able to contribute, like up to the annual limit. So you take that with you as well. Like if you wanted to leave, like go something outside of government, obviously if you have invested, I believe you just get what you've contributed plus the interest. But if you want to transfer somewhere else, you take that with you. It goes with you.
Gotcha. This sounds like with government employees, you have some of the same things you have in a private employer, such as we would call it a 401k plan. They get different names for it, but it's the same thing. You save for your retirement, it's your money, and the employer contributes perhaps something to that plan as well. But in addition to the what most businesses have, which is a 401k plan, you also have the benefit of a pension plan, and that can actually give you a little bit more at the time of retirement. Okay,
I just to add to that, we've had some recent retirees in the past few years, and they actually make more money being retired on an annual basis than they did working because of the pension, the 401k, and if they worked until they could collect Social Security, those 3 together, actually it's higher than their annual salary was. So it takes a while, but it's not a bad gig once you get there.
Yeah, I obviously I chose the wrong career. What can I say? Well, that's but that's good, because it's important too that somebody who works in private enterprise, you could get lucky. You could go work for the next tech startup, and they give you 10,000 shares of stock, and in 10 years, that 10,000 shares of stock is worth a couple of $1 million. I mean, that happens maybe not in Oklahoma as so much, but it certainly happens in California. It's the proverbial Google secretary that is now worth $20 million, and there's plenty of them out here. You're not going to get that opportunity working for government, but it sounds to me like you do have an opportunity to build wealth over time through your own personal savings and through a employer-sponsored pension plan. And I think one of the other benefits is the disruption that can be caused when I like to call them the Axeman falls. I remember I worked years ago for this very large international corporation, and they were having some troubles. So the company hired, we called him the Axeman. His job was to come in and fire everybody. You know, nobody in the company actually laid anybody off. This guy, it was his job. He called people into a room and basically fired them and what have you. But one of the things I came to realize over the years is how disruptive that can be in your personal life plan. You know, when all of a sudden you walk in one day and your employer says to you, guess what? You're out of a job. And if the economy's bad at that particular point in time, or if you work in a particular area where it's difficult finding a job, that can have an absolutely massive impact on your long-term financial goals that could take, could take 10, 15 years to recover from. So I think that is one of the certainly advantages of working for government. We're getting towards the end of our session. I've got no more questions from our participants today. So what I'd like to do is just go around to each one of you, ask for perhaps 2 things from each one of you. 2 pieces of advice you could give to our participants about either choosing a career path or doing something that will impact their careers. And I'm going to start off, Ross, with you.
So my advice is to the participant, if they're interested in getting a job, just to make sure that you're looking for a job that interests yourself, and you're looking for a challenge, opportunity for growth, which we offer at the IRS. And then the last thing is just try to do well in school, and then networking. I think that's the key to success. Networking with people, with the people, the professional people in the field, that to make sure you understand what you're getting to. A working professional. Stay in contact with your students, and as far as professors, just get into contact with that, and then those kind of like a lifetime, long-term relationship, that building network in the future. That's all I suggest. Thank you.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you, Ross. Tarek.
Thank you, Michael. I will have 2 advices for the future graduates, and I will say one is always know that you will always have one mind and one body that's going to take you for your entire life, and you have to take good care of them. What I mean by that is continue to learn, continue to know that your asset is your health, as well as your capacity of learning and expanding your ambitions, and know that you really, once you set those ambitions up 100%, you're going to exceed them. And the next thing I'm going to tell you is, I really want you all to consider government, really. And I think government right now, and as you can see from what happened during the pandemic, realize that there's a lot of things that is expected of government to solve in our society, and it takes a team. We learned that being in COVID, we realized that some families did not have access to the internet. So now it's the government job to expand that internet to disadvantaged families. We know now that the government will be receiving quite significant fundings, and a lot of things like Cindy mentioned, infrastructure. We need to think about the 5G. We need to think about that. We also have seen, I want to tell you that some of the sharpest mind now, as Michael said, in Silicon Valley, have started thinking of jumping from the private sector to the government to help the government IT muscle, so we can be as competitive in the long run as we can. So government role will be very essential in establishing, again, the United States as one of the competing powers in the world. So we need you to consider it once you come in. Think of yourself as an architect of government. You're coming to help reshape the government again, rethink government again. You're going to be working with lawyers, with engineers, with IT professionals. So it's very fulfilling, and we need you to consider that and come in and take us to the next level.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you, Tarek. Okay, let's try and keep these to 2 minutes so we can end on time here. Claudia, you're up next.
Yeah, I think I'm a firm believer, yeah, that you always have to continue your education. You have to continue learning, be very proactive. Don't think that, once you're done with college, that's it, you're done learning, right? So I'm continuously learning. New rules, new regulations are always coming out. So make sure that you're proactive and take that, next step, even if it makes you uncomfortable. Like, that's the best, environment to work in, like out of your comfort zone. Make sure that you're continually asking questions, that you're basically fulfilling yourself and your need to learn. And then also, obviously, we spoke about this, but the relationships, make sure that you're always focused on relationships, how, to build them, how to communicate, how you can be of help to others, as well as how others can help you there. My colleagues are my best resources, brainstorming and whatnot. So I think being proactive and keeping relationships are very key to a successful career.
Great. Thanks, Claudia. Keegan.
So a couple of the things I were thinking about, I think Claudia and Tarek did a great job covering, but one thing I would say too is be curious. That's just general in life, but when considering careers, be curious, ask questions, be open-minded, don't automatically think no without at least giving it a little bit of thought and a little bit of investigation. And along with that, really consider the opportunities you have. And when change enters your life, a lot of you are in school now, you're going to be going through this big change of starting your careers or your first step in your career, really embrace that opportunity. And as that goes on in your life, when those changes come, embrace those as opportunities.
Excellent. Thanks, Keegan. Cindy, your final thoughts.
Yeah, well, a lot of good advice has already been taken, so it's hard to add something new, but, I guess I'll reiterate that, if you want to be an interesting person, which we all want to be, you need to be interested, which feeds to the continual education and always learning about new things. I think will help you over the long term stay tied to your organization and really, keep a positive attitude, make the best of whatever situation you're in. You will face challenges in your jobs, no matter what channel you choose, and none of those are enduring. That too shall pass and you'll get through it. So just really keep a positive attitude, exude that high energy focus, and you will definitely be successful. And I want to reiterate, I think what Tarek said, careers in government are certainly a great option. There is a high need, they can be very fulfilling, and they can certainly help provide you a stable, fruitful job and career and retirement, as we talked about with the pension system. So keep that in mind and definitely consider government, because I think you'll find it more interesting than you might think it is.
Well, thank you. I'm going to just say a couple of words, and then I'm going to turn the session, if you will, over to Dr. Norman. I just want to personally thank all of the panelists for attending. Thanks for your insights. Thanks for your wisdom. For our participants, I would definitely agree. You should be considering looking, at least part of your career choice is, should I work for a government agency? And I'm going to tell you, I learned something today because, I was a little biased. I'm the first one to admit it. I'm thinking that probably a government job, while it might pay well, it might have a good pension, probably a little boring and there's not much going on. But I have really learned that there is a heck of a lot going on. And this sounds like really, really interesting stuff. And I don't know, if I had my career to do over again, I might certainly consider looking at one of the many, many opportunities that are out there to work for a government agency. Thank you very much. And with that, I'm going to turn the Zoom session over to Dr. Norman.
Okay, and I thought we had agreed you could call me Tom, but thank you, Michael. Thank you, Professor Manahan. Thank you to all the panelists. My closing remarks as somebody who's taught for 15 years, folks aspiring to go into government and in the private sector is to listen to what you've just heard and to listen to Professor Manahan's comments. I find about 40% of my business students end up getting government jobs. And you know, my ask for the panelists is you know, if you could make the time, for those of you that are listening, that are attendees, if you would like to do an informational interview with one of the panelists or somebody I'd recommend, I've placed my information in the chat so we could connect you. I've also placed my LinkedIn because I think that's something I learned in the private sector to network. And we've heard, you know, the value of that. We've heard of the power of being curious. I now, you know, want to thank my the co-chair and really the lead chair of this committee, Catherine Hansen from the Federal Executive Board. Apologize for not doing that at the very start. I wanted to thank the wonderful support of Edward Venegas, who's been making all the Zoom happen and quite masterfully. And though she had to leave for another meeting, I wanted to thank Debbie from SCEG as well, who's part of the G2U, for just her support in this program. So having given those thank yous, you know, again, the last thank yous come to those of you who are attendees. And for those of you who are listening in the future, you know, the chat should be available. If for some reason it's not, my email is tnorman, Norman at csudh.edu, should you want to follow up, because the purpose of this is to inspire folks who are looking for meaningful work to connect and learn from people like Keegan, like Tariq, like Ross, like Claudia, like Cindy, who have generously donated a few hours of their time to tell you about their exciting lives they lead and the exciting opportunities in the government sector, whether it's local, state, or federal. Thank you all for your time. And thanks again, Michael, for doing a masterful job facilitating this. Round of applause for everyone here.
Thank you all.
Thank you.